Gabriel Nassif will undoubtedly make the Pro Tour Hall of Fame this year. He may make it without dropping a single vote, the first player to do that in the history of the Hall. He's one of the game's all-time great players, but a ton of writers who have published their ballots have done a giant disservice to Gabe by writing of him simply, "Hey, Gabe will make it, that's all that needs to be said, everyone else is writing about him." But you know what? Everyone else isn't writing about him because they're all using that tacky cop-out, and that's a damn shame because Nassif is one of Magic's best on all fronts. Take his career, for example. His numbers are just sick. 9 Pro Tour top 8s. The only other players who have more are named Finkel and Kai. Gabe was the first player to wrest the Player of the Title year from Kai Buda's death grip on it during the early portion of this decade, and he is the last non-Japanese player to claim the title. And when a few naysayers began discussing his prospects for making it into the Hall of Fame, casting doubts over the fact his Pro Tour title was not good enough for the fact it was earned at a Team Pro Tour, Nassif won the first mixed format Pro Tour in the Pro Tour's history in 2009, demonstrating a knack for both constructed and limited and the ability to switch formats. A week later, he won a Legacy Grand Prix. All that as if 8 Pro Tour top 8s weren't already enough before he managed to win in Kyoto. In a conversation I had recently with Randy Buehler, himself a Hall of Famer, Randy pointed out that Gabe's longevity is truly a mind-boggling stat. Many players succeeded in the late 90s and early 2000s, only to find themselves left in the dust as a world of Magic players raised on 24/7 gaming thanks to Magic Online began lapping them. Not Gabe. He only got better. His top 8s are spread liberally throughout his career, including back-to-backs at Worlds. I chatted with Gabe waiting to get our bags at the airport for Pro Tour San Juan earlier this year and asked him pointedly if he thought he would make the Hall in his first ballot in 2010. He gave a coy smile and answered honestly. His odds look good. Gabe represents the game in a fashion that deserves all of our respect, playing at the top of its skill set for a decade, putting together one of the top 3 resumes of all time, and continuing to battle even after going on to make thousands and thousands of dollars playing professional poker. With my first vote of 2010, I was happy to select Gabriel Nassif. The Dragon Master loves Magic, and that's always endeared me to him. As a youngster watching the game from afar, Brian and Ben Rubin helped represent the possibility that I could succeed on the Pro Tour too, despite being young. He has always loved the game, even after moving on to play other things like Marvel Vs., where he was also a champion. Now Brian works in the gaming industry, but after winning a random PTQ in Las Vegas over a year ago, he has put together a hell of a run with a PT win and Grand Prix success too. His 3 Pro Tour top 8s leave him a little light on the competitive resume side, but his larger-than-life personality, writing, and other contributions to the game make up for other areas that are a bit weaker. Anton Jonsson makes my list because of Ted Knutson. In a note on Facebook, Teddy Card Games pointed out Jonsson's resume is just Hall bulletproof, with 5 Pro Tour top 8s spread across multiple formats, nearly a dozen Grand Prix top 8s, and a desire for the game that continues today, seeing Anton sitting with some 200 draft sets of each of the most recent Magic expansions on his MitGo account. That snapped me out of forgetting about Anton, who did a disservice to himself for not speaking up about the Hall or making himself more public around balloting time. But that shouldn't be a strike against him, and thanks to Ted, I was saved from having a ballot missing the supremely qualified Jonsson from it. Steve benefits from the opposite scenario of Anton. His resume is Hall-worthy, but he has had a very public push to get him selected for 2010. I'm voting for Steve because I feel his career merits being included, though being reminded of that fact incessantly during the balloting process certainly helped in remembering that fact. A member of the first cabal of players that started traveling the world to pick up pro points from foreign Grand Prix, Steve was teammates with John Finkel for a long time. That's high praise before you even consider the fact he's a Pro Tour champion as well. My final vote for 2010 is for Scott Johns, and it's a shame to me each year that Scott gets as few votes as he does. There was a time when Scott was arguably the best player in the world, making top 8 after winning alongside teammates Mike Turing and Gary Wise as members of Team Potato Nation. Those teammates are now in the Hall of Fame themselves, and when Scott won his match to clinch the title from their Pro Tour together, he was clearly emotional about finally closing. In addition to his career on the Pro Tour, Scott pioneered the world of Magic media online, paving the way for sites like thestarkingtonpost.com. He left the Pro Tour to help blaze that trail for Wizards of the Coast as the editor for dailymtg.com. Sheldon Menery's ballot has convinced me that the correct play is to not vote for a player on their first ballot who has been suspended during their career. That means for this year there is no vote for Tomohiro Saito, though if he doesn't get in, I expect to vote for him in 2011. It also means I wouldn't have voted for Olivier Rouel or Bob Marr, despite the fact Bob was one of my Magic heroes growing up in the Midwest, and the fact that I did vote for Olivier his first time out. If I had a 6th vote this year, I would have put Bram Snapvangers on the ballot. I almost put him on over Steve Oms. He's close, and I hope as the next few years level out and the ballot softens a bit that Bram makes the cut if he doesn't this year. Finally, while I rooted for Chris Picula growing up with the Pro Tour, and I have a great deal of respect for what he represented to the professional game, it wouldn't be what it is today without what he did then, serving as its early sheriff and working with the dead guys to clean up cheaters. However, I didn't have enough votes on my ballot this year to include him, and his lack of a Pro Tour title keeps him off my ballot. I'd love to see him get back on tour and put up a finish similar to what Jamie Park has done, but without another finish and a public face indicating he's still tied to the game, I just don't have room on my ballot to squeeze him in.